Finance Minister Lim Guan Eng has unveiled what appears to be a smaller budget for 2020, with the expected revenue also seen shrinking. However, the smaller allocation at just under 300 billion ringgit versus 315 billion previously is because Putrajaya no longer needs to make GST and other tax refunds, which is why revenue is also lower since it does not need a special dividend from Petronas to make those refunds. Budget 2020 has four thrusts, including boosting the digital economy and investing in people. Let's take a look now at the economic highlights before we go into some of the key takeaways. The government has earmarked 297 billion ringgit for 2020 spending, 6% lower than last year's budget. Revenue is expected to fall to 244.5 billion ringgit, down by about 7% from this year. This is due to the absence of a one-off special dividend from Petronas. Fiscal deficit is expected to increase to 3.2% of GDP from an initial target of 3%. It expects the economy to grow by 4.8% next year, with growth anchored by domestic demand. Inflation is seen picking up to 2%. The government is looking to introduce a new income tax ban for top earners. The plan is to raise the tax bracket for individuals earning in excess of 2 million ringgit from the current rate of 28% to 30%. According to Putrajaya's estimates, this increase will affect about 2,000 top income earners in the country. Lim says this would ensure a more progressive personal income tax structure and help the government to achieve its revenue target of 244.5 billion ringgit next year. Starting January 2020, Putrajaya will also start implementing the digital services tax to include services such as, but not limited to, downloaded software, music, video, or digital advertising. Foreign service providers can register with Customs Department starting October 1st, 2019. Meanwhile, from January 2021, Malaysians above the age of 18 as well as corporate entities will be assigned a tax identification number. The government will hold engagement sessions with all stakeholders next year. Finally, Putrajaya will merge the Special Commissioner of Income Tax and Customs Appeal Tribunal into the Tax Appeal Tribunal. Lim says this will enable taxpayers who are dissatisfied with the decision of the Inland Revenue Board or the Customs Department to submit an appeal to this tribunal starting 2021. Budget 2020 did have some goodies to offer Malaysians, including an average discount of 18% for users of toll highways belonging to Plus. Lim did not say how or when exactly this will be implemented, but he promised that this discount will save Plus highway users 1.13 billion ringgit next year and 43 billion ringgit throughout the balance of the concession period up to 2038. Meanwhile, Putrajaya is also proposing to raise its allocation for subsidies and social aid from 22.3 billion ringgit this year to 24.2 billion ringgit in 2020. Among others, the government wants to set aside 5 billion ringgit to expand the Cost of Living Aid or BSH scheme. This is to cover unmarried individuals above 40 years of age who make less than 2,000 ringgit a month. The same goes for special needs adults with a monthly income of less than 2,000 ringgit. Both groups will also become recipients of the My Salam Takaful scheme for free. There were also goodies for civil servants. These include a 50 ringgit per month increase to their cost of living allowance starting 2020, with an additional allocation of 350 million ringgit per year. There is also a special 500 ringgit payment for civil servants grade 56 and below, while retirees will get a special payment of 250 ringgit. As the cost of living remains high, the government has also introduced a number of initiatives to boost the labour market. Firstly, the government will be raising the minimum wage in major cities to 1,200 ringgit per month, a 100 ringgit bump from the current 1,100 ringgit. It will also make it compulsory for companies to provide overtime pay for staff who earn 4,000 ringgit and below. As for new and expectant mothers, effective 2021, employee maternity leave will be raised to 90 days from the current 60. Meanwhile, Putrajaya also plans to introduce the Malaysians at Work initiative, which will essentially provide both wage incentives for workers and hiring incentives for employers. The initiative is for graduates, women, and technical and vocational education and training apprentices. It is also aimed at reducing Malaysia's dependency on foreign workers by incentivizing the shift towards hiring Malaysians. As part of the government's aim to bring up the digital economy, Budget 2020 had a number of digital initiatives, starting with FinTech, where Bank Negara is finalising the licensing framework for digital banks to be issued by the end of the year for public consultation. The final framework is set to be issued by the first half of 2020 for applications. To groom Malaysian economies for Industry 4.0, the government will provide tax incentives to the electrical and electronics industry, including income tax exemption for up to 10 years for companies investing in selected knowledge-based services. Hand in hand with the National Fiberization and Connectivity Plan, the government will be establishing the 5G Ecosystem Development Grant worth 50 million ringgit. The Finance Minister also touched on how SMEs need to also move to the digital bandwagon. As such, the government will provide a matching grant of up to 5,000 ringgit per company, worth up to 500 million ringgit over 5 years, for SMEs to adopt digitalization measures, such as electronic point-of-sale systems and enterprise resource planning. Drilling down, the government will be introducing the concept of digital social responsibility. This will be a commitment by businesses to invest in digital skills for its staff, including technology scholarships, training and upskilling. Companies that do so will be given tax deductions. Also, in an effort to tap into the growing esports market, the government will up the allocation of 20 million ringgit. And finally, in order to increase the use of e-wallets among Malaysians, LIM announced a one-time 30 ringgit digital stimulus to citizens above 18 years, earning less than 100,000 ringgit a year. The stimulus will be available from January 2020, is valid for 2 months, and is expected to benefit up to 15 million Malaysians.